my professional career trying to give every player the feeling of being an author, of telling their story. The skeleton comes from me, skeleton comes from my teams, but the flesh on the bones comes from players. It's about empowering players to create unique experiences. That's the heart of immersive simulation, if I could sum it up in a sentence.
Hello and welcome to Tactically Sound. Today we are talking about the evolution of RPGs through immersive sim mechanics.
Arkane was started in '99 with one mission: to create the special kind of games we're most passionate about. Games with highly crafted, detailed world where gameplay experience focuses on player choice and consequence. We have always wanted to create games that rely on simulation instead of scripted moments.
Before we get started, Matt, I was thinking we should make sure we get as close to the true definitions of these words as we can, because we're not experts in these words. We mix and match them all the time, and I think that's why I thought it would be cool to unpack this. Like, what does immersive mean? What does simulation mean? What does role-playing mean?
Right.
And how that's all different from an immersive sim. We realized that you and I, we haven't really played that many immersive sims, but we see their impact on the genre of RPGs, right?
Totally.
So immersive or immersion often is like open world games like Skyrim, The Witcher 3, Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk. You feel like you're living in the world and you could kind of go anywhere, right?
Right.
That's, I think, what you and I traditionally grow up with as thinking, like, this is immersive, this is a simulation, this is role playing, right? That's kind of where we come from.
We're like, we live in an open world. The game's an open world. Immersed. It's that simple.
Totally. And then there's simulation, which again, I don't have as much of an experience with. My big introduction to this was Fire Emblem Three Houses, where they were kind of riffing off of Atlas's Persona series. So Persona has a calendar cycle. You know, it's like there's birthdays, there's errands you can do, there's specific tasks, specific people you talk to in the span of a day and a month. So, you mentioned Medieval Dynasty, which I've never played. What is a Medieval Dynasty?
So, Medieval Dynasty, I look at it as like one of the ultimate medieval simulators, I guess, outside of Kingdom Come Deliverance. But you start as you're just a lonely peasant, if you will, and you are trying to just set up a medieval settlement, a village. And so you're chopping down trees, you're surviving harsh winters and the seasons and the weather, and then you're inviting people to live at your settlement, creating relationships with them. And I think there are time contingencies on all of these, features in the game.
We were talking about how it kind of there's like the JRPG Atlas kind of world of it, but there's also the like survival world of it, like Stardew Valley.
Right.
And Metaphor is popularizing the Persona side of that kind of thing, where it's like it's really breaking through as a mainstream game, like a mainstream RPG. Right. You mentioned Kingdom Come Deliverance, which often is considered an RPG. The Outer Worlds, Fallout 1, Tim Kaine, people like, why am I blanking on Fallout New Vegas's developer, but Fallout New Vegas, The Witcher 3, Dragon Age, KOTOR, Mass Effect, Final Fantasy 7, you have your Square Enix, you have your, what do you call it? Larian and your CD Projekt Red, your Obsidian, all of that. So now, to define immersive sim, you may think just smash these words together and now you know what an immersive sim is. That's not entirely true. Warren Spector was reviewing games for, I believe it's PC Gamer N magazine, and the subject of Fallout 4 came up, and Warren Spector has a very specific view on what an immersive sim is and how games should be built. So here's what he said, quote, Emil Pagliarulo, who developed Thief 2, and then I believe Oblivion up through now Starfield. Works on the Fallout games, and he's an old Looking Glass. Looking Glass was a developer of Thief and other immersive sims. Bethesda games in general are clearly cousins of the immersive sim, but the way I've always described that, and I'm probably going to get myself in trouble here, but in the Bethesda games, their simulations are an inch deep and miles wide. Their whole thing is creating huge, expansive worlds that you could explore fully and live in. My games, and I think I can speak for game director Joe Fielder and the Underworld Ascendant team as well, they're an inch wide and miles deep. If you see the distinction, they're definitely related, but I'd say a little bit distantly related. So you could view this as a knock on Bethesda, or you could just view this as Warren Spector, kind of the father of immersive sim, explaining how a developer like Emil from Bethesda may have like splintered off from the Looking Glass vision of immersive sim to develop something new with Bethesda. And so I don't really see it as like this crazy critique of Bethesda. I just think he's defining why games like Deus Ex are different than games like Fallout 3 at least. So let's talk about Fallout 4, where I think is a lot of the audience started to turn away from Bethesda's style of development. At the time, I think The Witcher 3 out RPG'd Fallout 4, and that was the big discussion. And then The Outer Worlds by Obsidian and Tim Kaine kind of came, and again, brought to a contrast the idea of The Outer Worlds kind of being more true to form RPG versus Fallout 4. And I think Fallout 4, for better or worse, was the moment that Bethesda really started to lean in on what makes their games unique from all of the other subgenres and developers of RPG. So my critique of Fallout 4 personally is that I think, it is kind of an inch deep, mile wide. And I think they lost a lot of what we love about an RPG, but I'm not going to say that it's like a terrible game by any means. I just think that it's the beginning of what we eventually get with Starfield. And I think that's why so many people are angry about Starfield, is because they probably didn't like Fallout 4 and they now don't like Starfield. I think Starfield has improved a lot on Fallout 4. How do you feel about the relationship and development between Fallout 4 and Starfield as an RPG, as an immersive game, maybe as a simulation? How do you feel? Did they get better or did they get worse in your opinion?
You know what? I really feel like so far, I have not played enough Starfield to give like the most accurate take on this. But, from how much I have played of Starfield, and I played a lot of Fallout 3, New Vegas. I played a good decent amount of Fallout 4 as well. And just comparing where they were at and seeing that evolution going into Starfield, it's I feel like, you were saying it was an inch deep and a mile wide. I feel like they've just been now going 2 miles wide, 3 miles wide, and keeping it an inch deep, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, totally.
And so I just think they're getting better at making it bigger, adding more, trying to, I guess in a way, it seems like I'm trying to mainstream my platform, right? And my games, my genre. And it's, in a way, losing, like you were saying, what we originally fell in love with about Bethesda games, and which was that at the time you're like, whoa, this is pretty immersive, right? I wonder where they're going to go with the next game. And so we were actually, I think, at least I can speak for myself, I was craving for a little bit more depth with the immersion and what was possible to do within a Bethesda game. But instead, I got bigger worlds, I got more content, right? Lots of content. and it just went another mile wide. That's how I feel about Starfield in a way right now.
Yeah, so another peer of this immersive sim genre, he developed Prey, Arx Vitalis, Weird West, and Dishonored. This is Colantonio.
I'm Rafael Colantonio.
And I'm Harvey Smith. We're co-creative directors at Arkane Studios, the team that brought you Dishonored.
He said, if you really think about it, Bethesda games or Obsidian games are very, very immersive sim. The overlap between first-person RPG and immersive sim, it's very blurry. I would say they are less physical than Arkane games, and they're more on the stats. But at the end of the day, they totally rely on simulation. Doing things such as fooling a merchant by putting a bucket on its head is definitely an immersive thing, right?
Totally.
So, Matt, I'd never done this before on Skyrim.
Really?
Maybe I did when it first came out, but I forgot
There's
about this.
so many memes about this. This is like one of the charms
tell me.
of Skyrim. So basically, whenever you are pickpocketing, doing any thievery, right? If you got eyes on you, you're going to get caught. The guards are going to come. They're going to get you. You're going to get thrown in jail or pay a fine, right? And so players thought they were immersed in the game. They're like, hey, I can move objects. What if I took this bucket right here and put it on top of the NPC's head, the merchant or a guard in the one of the companions? Like there's a ton of chests down there, right? So I remember putting it on Karlak. I think it's not Karlak. No, that's Larian Studios. The leader of the companions, I covered his head and I started stealing all the things around him. And he had no idea because it was pretty cool. Players discovered the mechanic for getting caught comes from the NPC's vision, the eyes. And so if you just covered that, then the game is going to register that no one can see you right now. And so you could easily get away with looting a whole entire room in front of people if you just covered all the NPC's heads. Isn't that great?
I love that. And yeah, this is, I think Bethesda is a great introduction into the deeper RPGs and the deeper immersive sims, because as I play Starfield and get further along, like I'm almost at level 50 now and I'm over 100 hours in. I've beaten most of the factions and I'm still unlocking skills, which one of our viewers views that as a critique, that so much of the game is locked behind this really complex skill tree. So it's like, instead of locking, these very niche perks, they're actual game mechanics locked behind this challenge system based skill sheet. So I think that's a fair critique. Now, what's cool is if you're taking your time and doing shorter play sessions, like an hour to 2 hours, every so often you build and build and build, and you get to know each mechanic really uniquely. Now, I don't know if that is what they should do in the future, but I've discovered through doing Ryujin Industries that you can manipulate guards with your scanner and you can have them unlock key cards for you, which is super immersive sim.
Wow.
You could manipulate people in the dialogue, and I'm finding more options where I'm starting to use my dialogue skill checks more often. So I think the depth is there more than maybe people realize, but it's delayed over the course of hundreds of hours, which is probably not the best idea if you're going up against other RPGs that implement the immersive sim elements earlier on. So it's a selling point, right?
Well,
so you're bearing a selling point.
Right, with Baldur's Gate 3, they immediately show the player that lots of things can happen in this game. Environmental factors, weapon factors, character factors, right? Dialogue factors. They all affect this game, right? And they teach you right off the bat. We've already have like this built up history and expectation with what Bethesda is. And so if they really did bake in more immersion simulation into the game, like they're not, at least right now in the beginning, doing a good job at inspiring me to think that way like Larian Studios did.
Right. Yeah. And I was curious, like I love seeing how Redditors define genres. Usually I find pretty good answers. And so this one is from XCyper33 on the Baldur's Gate, or I believe it's on the Immersive Sim subreddit, but it's in reference to Baldur's Gate 3. He says, quote, "It has a lot of immersive sim elements like Deus Ex. The game tries its hardest to react to every single decision you make. The biggest reason the devs said it took so long to make is because they were spending a lot of time considering the players' actions and having the game respond to almost every possible scenario. Systems. Yes, it has a lot of systems, and I'm not just talking about the 5e mechanics. Every NPC NPC and PC must abide by the same consistent rules that you can use to your advantage. Push someone off a ledge, no matter how tough they are. If the fall is high enough, they will die. Push an object off a ledge to hit an enemy. If the object is heavy enough, the NPC will die. See oil on the ground, set it on fire by throwing a torch, water puddle. Casting electric spell will cause extra damage and stun anyone who's in it. It's very logic based, just like many immersive sims appears to be. This very same logic also applies in non-combat situations as well. Level design. Like older immersive sims, every building usually has multiple ways to get in. There's multiple solutions to the same problem. And the game is very stacked in terms of verticality. Boxes, you can stack boxes to get better height to reach new areas, one of the most staple immersive sim tropes. So I think that does a great job of showing how Larian Studios has incorporated both the kind of original influence of an immersive sim, which is Dungeons and Dragons, and the genre of immersive sim as kind of created and fostered by Warren Spector and the Deus Ex team and the System Shock team. So I think that it's cool to see as RPG fans how these subgenres are influencing the broader base. But let's hear a little bit more from Warren Spector. He describes that Dungeons and Dragons as an influence in this way. He said, I spent my entire career trying to recreate the feeling I had when I first played Dungeons and Dragons. So, he said it talks about telling stories with my friends, not being told a story, telling a story myself, being the storyteller. I spent my professional career trying to give every player the feeling of being an author, of telling their story. The skeleton comes from me, the skeleton comes from my teams, but the flesh on the bones comes from players. It's about empowering players to create unique experiences, letting every player author their own experience. So I feel like we've mostly covered what we wanted to talk about, which is just how the impact of immersive sims is making its way through the RPG genre. One game maybe you've been playing this weekend that could apply to what an RPG is and how it can be immersive, or it could be an immersive sim. Talk a little bit about Warhorse Studios' Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Yes, thank you. So Kingdom Come Deliverance, I just started playing this game because, I saw that it was only $2.99 on PlayStation Store. So I was like, I gotta get this game. And I think if you have premium PS Plus, you can just download it for free. So it's a definite play, guys. If you are into Bethesda titles, Skyrim, just RPGs, and just also first-person RPGs, this is a game that you have to try out. I'm going to warn you, there are difficult life sim tactics and mini games to overcome. But if you overcome those challenges, you're going to reap the benefits of this game, because just like a Bethesda title or even other life sims, you get multiple ways to tackle a given scenario, and I don't feel like I'm being steered into stealth archer. You know what I mean? And so in a way, it feels more immersive sim than Skyrim to me. I was just talking to my cousin who's going through the game right now, and we had two completely different ways of engaging this stealth mission. I actually came in going, I'm going to sneak, I'm going to actually loot all of the chests. And eventually I woke up the NPC I was trying not to wake. And so I entered a combat, and I had this whole war where he was surviving with just his fists. He was so strong. I'm like weak right now. And I have this sword, and I'm like slashing him and stabbing him. He wouldn't go down for a while. I finally got him down, and I stole the needed quest item. And then my cousin, he managed to not wake him. He came in, found only that one chest he needed, got in, got out, completed the mission much quicker than I did. Now, I think I had the more exciting approach, but I'm so happy that I didn't break the game with how I played. Does that make sense?
Right.
I wasn't penalized for that. I was actually encouraged, great, you decided to do that. Well, let's continue playing. You don't have to reload, save scum for this. Just go on with it. So I really enjoyed that level of immersion that an RPG can have, and that's what I want to see more inside of a Bethesda title, because the world of Elder Scrolls is so interesting and deep. And so if I can be more immersive in Elder Scrolls 6, that's what I think me and a lot of people are looking for.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's totally the sentiment I've been sensing from players. And so when you told me you were playing that, I was like, oh, we should talk about what is an immersive sim, because it's like this thread we've been pulling on all week of, I feel like they're impacting the genre of RPGs, and there's an expectation that Bethesda is trying to catch up to. And the more I play Starfield, I think... Oh, go ahead.
No, I just also wanted to say, you were inspiring me, like, us talking about immersive sims. I've played Dungeons and Dragons, and I've played Dungeons and Dragons with people who shouldn't have played Dungeons and Dragons, and people who are right-minded for Dungeons and Dragons. And so what I wanted to say is immersive sims are not for everyone. It takes a certain kind of brain to play. You have to have an imagination. You have to, even in a way, have some game literacy of how games work, to just even have that sort of imagination of, what am I allowed to do? What are the confines of this? What are the limitations of this game? And so if you're not having that brain power, you're after work and you're thinking like, oh, I can imagine how to problem solve in a whole nother world, right? I just problem solved all day at my job. Now I got to problem solve and imagine how to tackle this scenario in this game. It can be a lot for some people, and they just want to have their handheld in a way a little bit more, or not even handheld, but just like, I imagine like they want the chef to cook their meal instead of like going to Korean barbecue, given the meat, where you're now pseudo cooking it yourself, right? And that's totally how I imagine the immersive sim is like. It's like I, instead of going to the restaurant where I get to choose what I want on, and then get to eat that, like I'm going to Korean barbecue, still choosing what I want, but I have that skeleton, right, that I get to cook with, and these are the limitations, and I'm going to see if I can cook more on this side of the pan, or right. But you can see what I mean in terms of video games.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we'll leave it there. That is our episode of Tactically Sound on the impact of immersive sims on the RPG genre. So thank you guys for watching. And Matt, where can they follow you?
Follow me on YouTube or Instagram at Jumby Jumbwa, JUMBYJUMBWA. See you guys there.
And you're on the Yeti Den already, so if you want to subscribe here, please do. And we will see you guys next time. Later. Bye.